Is this what you're gonna do? Do you mind not being in my frame or in my face? Can you lay down? Stop it, weirdo. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Stephanie. I am a 26-year-old stay-at-home mom to my 2-year-old son Maverick, and I am currently 27 weeks pregnant with baby boy number 2. This video is obviously long overdue, seeing as I am well into my 2nd trimester, pretty much almost in my 3rd, but I did think it was important to share this. This video is going to be talking about all of my 1st trimester must-haves. So real quick, I'll give you a little bit of a backstory. My pregnancy with my firstborn was a complete breeze. I would not have known I was pregnant until the very end if I wasn't growing. I had little to no symptoms early on. My 1st trimester was just a breeze. I had no bad symptoms that everyone tried to prepare me for. It was like flawless. I had no complaints. This pregnancy, however, the 1st trimester was pretty rough. The exhaustion was awful. I was nauseous the entire 1st trimester and a little bit into my 2nd trimester. I think by week 15 is when the nausea subsided, but up until then, I was literally nauseous basically 24/7. As well as I dealt with bouts of constipation and normal, pretty much like everything you are warned about in the 1st trimester of pregnancy, I experienced in the 1st trimester of pregnancy this time around. So I just thought this was a really good idea to share what my tips and tricks were as far as like what my must-haves were to try to kind of combat those symptoms within the 1st trimester. I know every pregnancy is different, so different things work for different women, but that's why I think this is great, because if anything on this list is something you haven't tried and it ends up working for you, then I am glad to help another mama out. Okay, so must have number 1 would definitely for me be lemon water. Something about a citrus drink, and actually I've heard this from other people as well, they'll eat a citrusy kind of fruit or just suck on a lemon even, or even keep lemons in their purse to smell. Something about the smell itself could even help. But for me, drinking lemon water and sipping it especially was definitely helpful to combat the nausea. I will say if I was drinking it in abundance, like gulping it down, it didn't do really well for the nausea. However, if I spent much of the day sipping on it and made sure that there was a lot of fresh lemon in the water, it wasn't just lemon juice like from the bottle, and it wasn't just like, you know, a lemon wedge. Like I had a bunch of lemon wedges in the water and I sipped on that all day. That was something that really helped with the nausea. And I'm kind of going to contradict myself a little bit, but water in abundance as well. The thing of it was, it was hard. I didn't want to drink a ton of water because honestly it kind of aided in my nausea from time to time. However, drinking a lot of water was in fact helping with some of the dehydration I was feeling, because in my 1st trimester as well, I'm not going to say throughout the whole 1st trimester, but in my 1st trimester as well, I was dealing with what felt to me of just like dehydration. Like I just constantly was thirsty. So water in abundance, obviously staying hydrated, was helping to combat the dehydration feeling. Tums, or I guess any other relatively similar type of medicine, if you will, not only for the nausea, but I also dealt with a little bit of indigestion early on, and that was not from anything other than I think a hormone level rising, if I remember correctly. If I went back to my 1st trimester update, you'll know for sure. I think that's what I was getting the indigestion from. But anyhow, Tums was really helping the indigestion, because actually what was happening a lot of times too was sometimes I would feel indigestion even just from drinking water. It's so like the 1st trimester was just, none of it makes sense together, but separately it all means something. I had indigestion that from time to time would bring on the nausea, and if I could take a Tums and relieve some of the indigestion, sometimes it would help to relieve some of the nausea. Peppermint gum. This is another thing that kind of goes hand in hand with the lemon water. I have heard people just sniffing peppermint essential oil. They would diffuse it in their home or wear like the, you know, the oil necklaces and put the peppermint in it. That would help to ease the nausea. For me, just chewing on some peppermint gum, if I felt like too nauseous to eat something and the lemon water wasn't working because water, like I said, was making me nauseous as well, I would grab a piece of peppermint gum, and for some reason it had to be peppermint. Not spearmint, not any other kind of gum. It had to be peppermint. That would help to ease some of the nausea as well. A lot of this you will see is geared toward nausea because for me personally, that's a lot of what I dealt with in the 1st trimester. So the next is kind of an obvious ginger ale, and I will say this when it became a point where I want to say around probably between 9 and 13 weeks was so rough with nausea, and the lemon water didn't seem to help anymore. And when I was in those moods where it felt like if I ate, it was just gonna make the nausea worse, I would then start to sip on ginger ale. And someone actually reminded me, they were like, why don't you try to sip on ginger ale? And I was like, wow, I didn't think of that. And that's the thing of it too. It started with, I got the small cans of the caffeine-free, what is the brand? The classic ginger ale brand. I forget, I can't think what it's called at the top of my head. I think it says an S. There's quite a bit of sugar in it. So at first I was like, oh my God, like I really don't want to have to like drink these throughout the day, but I didn't even have to. It came down to, if one of those mini ginger ales, if I sipped on one of those throughout the entire day, it really, really helped to subside the nausea, which then brings me to my next point, which is, as much as I didn't want to do it, carbs. If I would sip on ginger ale throughout the day, it definitely helped to ease the nausea to the point where I wasn't so nauseous where I couldn't eat. And that's when once that was starting to help me and I was starting to eat a bit more, because I lost 8 pounds in my first trimester because I wasn't eating much at all because I was so nauseous and felt like if I ate, it would make it worse. So what ended up happening when I discovered that the ginger ale was helping so much to sip on throughout the day, I started to then not hate food so much, and I wasn't so turned off by it. And I started to notice with carbs, for me, if I ate anything carb heavy, and it didn't have to be a big plate of it, it didn't have to be a whole loaf of bread or like a whole sub roll or anything like that, but a bagel with cream cheese, even a half bagel with cream cheese, waffles, any type of pasta, any type of bread, potatoes, rice, anything carb heavier, if I included that in what I was eating and I was eating it before I started to feel hungry, which my hunger at the time never felt like hunger, it felt like nausea. First trimester was strictly, there was no such thing as hunger, I would just feel nauseous, which would then kind of trigger like you should probably eat something. Even though I didn't want to, it ended up helping. But what I had learned was if I was eating anything with enough carbs before feeling the nausea, I then wouldn't feel nauseous at all. And unfortunately, early on, which I guess is another must-have, is just having kind of like an eating schedule. And this really, really helped me, because what was happening in the beginning was, like I said, I wasn't really feeling hungry, but I was feeling nauseous so often that if I was spreading out kind of what I did and how I did it, I would wake up and the first thing I'd drink, I started sipping on lemon water. Well, actually coffee first, but that didn't really do anything as far as that goes. Then I would sip on the lemon water. Then I would eat breakfast, which I would make sure had a carb in it. Then I would start to then sip just like in between here and there, depending on what I felt like. I would sip on the water and then the ginger ale, yada, 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 and go back and forth. And then I would kind of plan out, like I want to say it was probably every 2 hours, I started to plan out to eat something that was a little bit carb heavy. I did go a few days, maybe even a couple weeks, where I was eating a good amount of bread, because to combat the nausea, I would just eat a piece of bread and butter, but it was helping, or a piece of toast with butter. And I would kind of plan it out that way. So my next must-have, like I mentioned, was coffee, and this was not for nausea at all. Everything I listed pretty much pertains to the nausea and the indigestion. The rest, which there's not much left, but this pertains more towards the constipation. TMI, am very regular. I have been very regular for a long time. So the discomfort of not being regular weighed on me so heavy. It was making me so depressed because I wasn't getting that relief that I would normally have on a daily basis, and it was rough. Coffee, they say, is a natural laxative, and coffee was always helping me to use the restroom. I was told a bunch of times, and I never actually went through with it, but I was also told that if you didn't want to drink caffeine and you ended up getting decaf coffee, something in the coffee bean itself is what is kind of the natural laxative. It's not the caffeine, so caffeine free probably would have helped me throughout the day if I had had like another cup in the middle of the day, because I only had 1 cup a day in the morning and it wasn't decaf. That may have helped as well, just in case you want to give it a shot yourself. I'm not sure, like I said, I didn't try. But having that cup of coffee in the morning let me at least have that release in the morning. By the end of the night, it was still it just wasn't as smooth as I had planned for it to be. I wasn't regular, like I said, but coffee in the morning gave me at least like once a day of that relief that I needed. Okay, the very last must-have I will say is to just have some support, and I mean this in a very physical sense. One of the greatest blessings my husband could have given me is just to be supportive. Whether you are with your significant other, father of your child, whoever's around you, if they are being supportive, it is so helpful. Like I said, the nausea was so bad some of the times, and I actually never ended up getting sick from my nausea, which I'm not kidding you. There were times where I was on the couch crying and I was like, I wish I would just vomit, truthfully, because I'd probably feel so much better. And because I have a 2-year-old and I have responsibilities, it's honestly really hard in the midst of like the beginning of all of this hormone and changes and discomfort and tired and this and that to like be okay during that time. And one of the things for me that was really hard was kind of feeling the guilt of I cannot do everything that I want to do for my 2-year-old because I am suffering right now. So the best thing to have is support. When my husband would get home from work and I had a rough day as far as how I was feeling physically, especially how bad the nausea was, he literally would just let me sit down and he would take over, even though he just worked a full day, and he would take over until the night ended and he'd put our son to bed. And it was just really needed. If whoever is there in support for you is maybe not up to par on that, and have whatever kind of maybe excuse, just give them a quick reminder of how temporary it is. I think is important to know, because it can be a lot. Like I said, for my specific scenario, which I know many people share, is that, you know, I'm a stay-at-home mom. So my husband working full-time and then coming home to have to then do everything else, you know, clean up from dinner, or even sometimes make dinner, pick up behind our son. You know, he doesn't get to shower until late at night before he went to bed and whatever. It could be a lot on them, and it could seem like to them, you know, it could be like they're dealing with that forever, but it is just temporary. And they also have to keep in mind that, you know, I had to remind my husband, and not that he needed the reminder, but I felt like I needed to remind him just to make me feel better, that, you know, I can't wait till I can take that role back, because I feel awful enough with how awful I already physically feel that I have to now put this on you. And he never made me feel guilty about it. He never made me feel like I was a burden, you know. So it's just really important to have that kind of support, to keep people around you that are willing to physically help you, because in those times you really just kind of feel helpless. So anybody who's not really worth relying on, I would just not even bother, truthfully. And I guess that's one more thing that I could add, is just a must-have of kind of keeping that mentality as well throughout, is just that this is temporary. I will say, obviously, every pregnancy, between every woman and even between women alike, obviously, like I said, my last pregnancy is so different to this one. Every pregnancy is different, every woman is different. What you're gonna go through might not be exactly what I go through, it might not be what someone else goes through. It might be super easy, it might be super hard, it might be just relatively hard enough where you can't wait till it'll pass. Unfortunately, some women, they have it rough the whole time. For the majority of women, it is a temporary stage of pregnancy, and eventually you will get your energy back, you will get your hunger back, you will get your motivation back. So just bear that in mind as well when it's becoming really hard to bear, because it does feel like, and it is a long period of time. You figure 12 weeks, and like I said, the first 15 weeks I was feeling most of this can feel like an eternity, but it came to an end. It is very much temporary. So just remind yourself of that as well, just to kind of get you through the rest of the day when, you know, it's only noon and you're ready to like give up and crash and you're wondering why you're doing this to yourself. It's also worth it in the end, and it is only temporary. So that is it. That is all of my must-haves for my first trimester in pregnancy. Let me know down below what you guys did that helped you out. Maybe some of my viewers that are in their first trimester would really appreciate seeing some things that maybe they haven't seen, or that I didn't mention, that they haven't tried themselves. I'm also really curious just to see as well, you know, what kind of worked for you guys. Or let me know if there's stuff that I mentioned that you did try that worked, or maybe didn't work. Let me know in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Also hit that subscribe button if you are new. I would love to have you. We are going to be revealing baby number 2's name fairly soon, so you'll definitely want to stick around to see that. And I hope you're all enjoying your day, night, afternoon, whatever time it is, wherever you are, and I'll see you guys very soon in my next one. Bye.